Hello my dear friends and welcome to my channel. Don't forget to make yourself a cup of tea because today we have very interesting stories and one of them is a story about an entitled father who screamed at the cashier so much the OP decided to teach some manners to that man in a very fun way. Subscribe if you haven't and I hope you'll enjoy these stories. My family, me, my mum and my stepdad, who I shall refer to as dad since he basically is, had just been shopping and we were driving back home and we pulled into our estate and as we were driving down our road, we saw a woman who we didn't recognize standing on the path, but we thought nothing of it. Our road is next to a school so lots of people tend to stand around. We pulled into our parking spot and we began loading up on shopping bags to take to the house, which was down a pedestrian path and round a bend, out of view of the car. We walked down to the house and we put our shopping on the counter. Then my dad stopped me. "Dad. I think I left a few bags in the boot. Can you run and grab them?" I agreed and he threw me the car keys. I went outside and as I walked towards the car I saw that our car boot was open and someone was inside. My dad forgot to lock the car. It was the woman we saw before rummaging around in our shopping and her arms were full of biscuits, cakes and a pack of cobs. Me, excuse me, what the hell are you doing? I don't know, she is a mother yet, but she is, so I'll be calling her EM. EM, I'm just getting the shipping out of my car, why is that your business? Me, this isn't your car, I have the keys, this is my dad's car. So what are you doing? EM, I was waiting for my babies to finish school and we needed some food for the house. You left these here and walked away, so I'm taking them instead of you people wasting them. E, we aren't wasting them. If you need food too and buy it, don't take ours. EM, but we hate shopping and this is so much easier. Can you please just give it me? Me, no sorry. I then proceed to take the food from her. Close the car and lock it. The entire time I'm getting grief from her as she calls me all sorts of names and proceeds to storm off to presumably to and ruin someone else's day. So this woman goes around checking to see if cars are locked. Well, I guess it's normal. For crazy people, of course. Right now I'm feeling proud of myself for doing something wild. This last weekend I and my wife decided to visit her family. They live in a much larger city than we do, and we go now and again to break up the monotony. On Saturday my wife and her sister wanted to go shopping at one of the larger malls in the area. Not wanted to do nothing alone, I tagged along. At some point, while listening to their girl talk, I decided to grab a bite, so I told my wife and headed to the food court. At this point, the lunch rush was still going on, so the place was fairly packed. I decided on Chinese food, a place I had been to before, so I trusted that the food was good. So I got in line to wait like anyone else. This particular restaurant was pretty simple. It had 4 cashier lanes and grills behind it where you could watch the cooks make your order while you wait, but being a Chinese place it took longer than the typical fast food place, so the lines were moving slowly. While waiting my phone died, I simply forgot to charge it earlier. So I started people watching the crowd to avoid getting bored. Nothing out of the ordinary until I noticed ED with 2 boys a little bit ahead of me in the line next to me. The 2 boys, maybe around 11 and 9, must have been getting impatient because they would periodically start to screw around or bug ED. Occasionally pushing each other around or asking when they would have food. ED looked like he was growing more agitated by the minute. Every time he had to turn to deal with these 2 his face grew redder and redder. Understand, dear reader, that this was a busy loud area and they weren't being super loud, so they didn't really attract attention yet. I did, however, have to turn away now and again to avoid being noticed though. The trouble started when ED finally reached his turn. The girl politely did the usual and asked him for his order, but instead of just ordering, ED started to complain, mainly about how long he and the 2 boys were in line for. She did her best to be polite, but he just kept going for a few minutes. By this time the gentleman behind the trio was also getting annoyed. He noticed me and gestured to ED with a "you gotta be kidding me" look, so I just responded with a shrug. As far as I knew, he wasn't wrong. If ED was in such a hurry, why not just get your food and be done with it? Eventually, the girl at the register was able to get the order. I was now second in place in my line and right next to the 2 kids by this point. I could hear the angry ED go into a tirade about the performance of the restaurant and insist that if it wasn't for his kids wanting it, they would have gone to a better place. About how said Japanese place was better, but because it was currently closed they had to suffer through this. Ed even started to insult the poor girl behind the counter, the gentleman behind Ed, and the two boys tried to tell Ed off, telling him they are just doing their best, but Ed shot back with a typical, "I'm a paying customer, so I can do what I want" excuse, and kept going. The girl was obviously growing upset as Ed was bullying her, and I could see tears start to form in her eyes. Ed just wouldn't give her a break. The gentleman behind the trio was also looking like he was getting ready to throw punches. At this moment I thought that I really wanted to do something, but I didn't want to get into a fight, even if I had backup or ended being the backup for someone else. That's when I noticed it. Ed was wearing cargo shorts, the kind that never seems to fit right. I thought for a second and found an alternative idea. I found myself just reacting, and the whole thing took only a few seconds. I stepped forward in between Ed and the two kids, grabbed both side loops of the seat of his pants, and yanked as hard as I could. Without stopping, I immediately ran for it. I had to push through a lady in the last line, but I made it. I heard a lot of screaming behind me, but not wanting to get pummeled by an angry Ed, I didn't even look back. I ran to the other side of the mall where my wife was still shopping with her sister. I knew my wife enough to predict what stores they would be in. I felt safe enough in a girl's clothing store next to my wife, so after I caught my breath I just started laughing. My wife asked what the hell, and I just told her I would tell her later. I didn't want to spoil their shopping, so I spent the rest of the time keeping an eye out for an angry Ed. I did spot them at one point, now with a blonde lady and a little girl in tow, but that was it. I was lucky enough to avoid them. When we decided to go eat the lunch, rush was pretty much over, and I just had to know. I went back to the Chinese place, and luckily the young girl was still there, so I purposely waited behind an extra person for a chance to talk. When I got the chance, I asked her what happened to Ed. She told me that someone yanked his pants down mid-tirade. The guy who did the deed took off, but Ed couldn't catch him because the gentleman behind Ed took the opportunity to push Ed flat on his butt. The gentleman just insisted that he was trying to catch the culprit and missed. Then Ed, being the official center of attention, just grumbled for the rest of the time. He got his food paid for and sat down on the opposite side of the food court somewhere. I wanted to laugh, but just in case I never told her it was me who did the pantsing, even though I really wanted to, so I just took my order and joined my wife and her sister for lunch. I told my wife later and we had a laugh. She scolded me for pulling such a stunt, but was proud of me for finding such a funny method for helping the cashier. Right now I'm still beaming about it and wanted to share it with you guys. You do realize there could have been, and there most probably was, a camera. Oh, I wish I could see that video. It sounds brilliant and very amusing. I got married last year, but a year before that me and my now wife settled on a venue and then started the process of whittling down guests. We had a ceremony capacity of 80. I come from quite a large family with few friends. She has a small family but lots of friends. Mostly we share her friend group. However, this did lead to us making a couple of rules. Only inviting family members to the day part of the wedding we had both actually seen during our 5-year relationship. No random cousins or uncles who never enter our lives. No one below 16. We came to our own conclusion, rightly or wrongly, that we would rather have more adults there who are more likely to enjoy the day instead of kids who may not. Also, if we invited all the kids in the family, it would be a quarter of our capacity. So when we got engaged, my grandparents, only ones I have left on my side, were very happy and immediately told me to invite who we wanted and to sod everyone else, do what we want. Once we made the decision regarding venue, the decision around the inviting children followed pretty much after. This is where the drama begins. I'm the oldest grandchild to their oldest son. They had 3 sons, my dad and 2 uncles. My dad and his oldest brother all have kids over 16. Youngest brother, however, has 4 all under 11. This uncle and aunt tend to use my grandparents a lot of extra childcare and support. Which is fine, however it has led to this situation where they are regarded as their babies and need extra attention. However, the choice we made led to my GPs immediately saying they won't come to the wedding if they aren't invited. This took all of us, my parents included, by surprise. Especially as we heard that the auntie and uncle affected were fine with it. However, my GP strong-armed them into agreeing with their position. This led to my dad having a conversation with the grandparents to try and make them see sense. I never got the details, all I know is that it ended with my dad leaving the house after telling my grandmother that the word stubborn would be said on her grave, and he's usually a very controlled individual. 2 days later my sister, 21 at the time, dropped by theirs to say hello. She was there chatting normally, and my grandma just cuts in and goes, "So then, what do you have to say about it all?" This took her back, but she defended our position. My grandma argued that we were picking on them and always believed we were better than that family. She also said she wanted a nice picture of all the grandkids together. My sister asked her how she could be choosing between the grandkids, doesn't she love us all the same? She didn't respond for a few seconds before eventually saying, "Well, they are younger, they are our babies." My sister left in tears. I felt terrible and responsible for the fallout. My dad talked me out of going around and having it out with them. He said, "Leave and we will see if they come around." Time passes and I am delivering invites to relatives. I was also rushing to meet a friend, so it was very much in and out of houses. I arrived at their house and only remembered the situation as I walked in. I handed them the invite and was immediately told they would not be attending. I was stunned into silence. I told them the decision wasn't personal and all kids were welcome for the evening party. They told me it wasn't fair and it should be everyone or they wouldn't come at all. I finally cracked and shouted at them. I stated I didn't realize my grandparents' attendance was conditional. They reply with, "How do you think this makes us feel?" I blurt out, "How do you feel? My grandparents aren't coming to my freaking wedding, they asked me to leave." I walk to the door, turn around, walk back, grab the invite, say you won't be needing this and leave. I haven't seen them since. On a plus note, the wedding was amazing, the additional friends we invited really made it a party atmosphere, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I've decided it was their loss and it's something they will have to live with. It's their loss. I say nobody who says things like that deserves to be present for such a wonderful day. If they truly loved OP, they would have come, regardless of whether those kids were invited or not. Back in September 2008, my grandmother had a heart attack and had to be hospitalized. I had recently moved out of my parental home. My stepbrother too had moved out just a year earlier. When my dad and stepmom were taking turns staying with her in the hospital, my paternal aunt would just drop in for a few minutes, make small talk and leave. She suggested that my dad should kill our dog Dennis. The reason she gave for this kick in the butt worthy advice was that Dennis was a dog and dogs bring bad luck. What the actual hell? Her mother was obviously in the hospital because of the dog and certainly not because, in spite of being diabetic and having a high cholesterol, she refused to stop stuffing her face with fried junk. My dad, of course, told her to shut up. Just a few days later, Grand Monster kicked the proverbial bucket. Cue insane willing and crying from my aunt while going on and on about how she wouldn't have lost her mother if only that damn dog had been put down. You may wonder why she was so obsessed with killing Dennis. It's because Dennis had never liked her or her husband and son. He would growl at them when they came near him. He was a smart dog, and I guess he could sense what crap people they were. Dennis was a mongrel, 24 inches at the withers, and weighed around 90 pounds. So of course when he growled, he appeared intimidating. She was also really jealous of him and always commented on how we were wasting money by feeding and caring for him well. Grand Monster's illness and subsequent death gave Crazy Aunt an opportunity to get revenge. I began to fear for Dennis as soon as I heard what that piece of crap had said. Since my stepbrother couldn't make it, I decided to take time off work and go to my dad's place. This was mostly to watch over Dennis and make sure Aunt and her family didn't get a chance to harm him. My dad made arrangements for the funeral, talked to the priest, etc., while stepmom and I cooked and got the house ready. My aunt was there too, but mostly milking the occasion for attention and being a crying, wailing basket case. She was still going on about how the dog had brought bad luck. However, when my stepmom told me to cook Dennis's chicken stew for him while she took a bath and got dressed, Aunt began to act real funny. She would hang around the kitchen and near the food on the pretense of making small talk with me. I just gave her monosyllabic responses, hoping she would back off. Just as I got the stew off the burner, I heard my dad walk in through the front door. He called out to me, probably needed my help with something. I began walking towards the front gate in a hurry. However, as I reached the door, I was overcome with a horrible feeling. In my haste, I had left Crazy Aunt alone with Dennis's food. I ran back to the kitchen, with my dad asking me what the hell was wrong. I entered the kitchen to find that monumental idiot pouring some sort of white substance into Dennis's chicken stew. My father took it from my aunt's hands and instantly identified it as a kind of rat poison. I watched that substance get dissolved into the stew and disappear, leaving no trace of foul play. If Aunt hadn't gotten caught, we would have surely lost our beloved family member. Aunt just stood there with a deer in headlights look on her face. I can't remember the last time I had seen my dad so angry. He told her she was to attend Grand Monster's funeral and then never show him her face again, while I somehow overcame the urge to throttle her. My stepmom too had joined us and was told what happened. Aunt somehow stammered that she was doing what was right for the family, repeating the nonsense about black dogs bringing bad luck. Of course, no one was having it. My uncle arrived shortly afterwards, and in spite of being a grade A idiot himself, he did have the decency to look ashamed when he was told what his wife had tried to pull. My dad didn't speak to them for over 2 years. He only contacted them again when he found out that they were in a dire state financially. As for Dennis, the good boy lived a long and healthy life. He passed away last year at the age of 14, surrounded by those who truly loved him. Oh, I'm glad you've noticed her trying to pour this liquid into your dog's stew. What a cruel woman. I'm not even sure OP's dad needed to contact them. They don't deserve OP's dad's kindness. Well guys, that's it for today. If you end up enjoying this video, please consider subscribing, and if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'm gonna link it right here, the story about terrible parents who abandoned their baby girl and 16 years later they showed up to demand her to donate bone marrow for their poor son. Check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you in my next video.